I'll never forget the look on Margaret's face when I walked into her room at the nursing home. She was 84 years old, and when she saw me, she reached out and grabbed my hand. "I made a mistake," she said. "I thought this was the responsible choice." In my 15 years as a caregiver, I've worked in nursing homes, assisted living facilities, memory care units, and private home care. I've been present for hundreds of these transitions. I've watched seniors move into institutional care, and I've seen what happens after. And I need to tell you something that most people don't talk about. The decision to move into a nursing home is rarely as simple as families think it is. I've seen nursing homes save lives. I've watched seniors get the medical support they desperately needed, stabilize, even thrive in some cases. But I've also sat with people who deeply regretted the decision, people like Margaret, and the reasons why would probably surprise you. If you're a senior watching this, I want you to know I see you. Maybe you're feeling pressure right now. Maybe your children are worried. Maybe you had a fall or your spouse passed away. And suddenly everyone's talking about safety and what's best for you. You're terrified of being a burden, but you're also terrified of losing yourself, of giving up the life you've built, of becoming someone you don't recognize. Those fears are real, and they deserve to be taken seriously. If you're watching this for a parent or a loved one, I see you too. You're drowning in guilt and fear. You can't be there every day. You've heard the horror stories, but you've also been told this is the responsible choice, the safe choice. You're searching for permission, either to move forward or to consider alternatives you're afraid to even suggest. The guilt you're carrying, I've seen it in every single family I've worked with. You're doing the best you can with what you know, and the fact that you're here, trying to learn more, tells me everything I need to know about how much you care. Here's what I want both of you to understand. This decision isn't just about safety. It's about identity. It's about autonomy. It's about quality of life. And most families don't realize what they're actually trading until it's already done. I make these videos because I've sat with the regret. I've held hands with seniors who wished they'd made a different choice. I've listened to families say, "Why didn't anyone tell us?" And I've seen the patterns over and over that lead to that regret. I'm not anti-nursing home. I need to be very clear about that. I've worked inside them. I've cared for residents at every stage. I've seen situations where institutional care was absolutely the right answer, where it literally saved someone's life. But I've also witnessed what happens when families don't understand the full picture before making this decision. And once it's made, reversing it is incredibly difficult. Today, I'm going to share 6 hard truths that most people don't talk about until it's too late. These aren't theories. These are patterns I've witnessed firsthand, caring for hundreds of seniors, being present through transitions that families only saw in snapshots. Some of what I share might be uncomfortable. It might challenge what you've been told is the right thing to do, but I'm sharing it because I care, because I've seen what silence costs, because you deserve to make this decision with your eyes fully open, understanding not just what you might gain, but also what you might lose. Margaret's regret haunts me because I think about all the Margarets who are making this decision right now, today, without knowing what I've learned in 15 years of witnessing these transitions. If I can give you the awareness she didn't have, if I can help you ask the questions she didn't know to ask, then this video will have been worth making. So let's talk about what really happens when a senior moves into a nursing home. Not the brochure version, the version I've witnessed from the inside. The first hard truth I need to share with you is this: the loss of autonomy happens faster than anyone expects. And I don't mean the big, obvious losses. I mean the small, daily decisions that make up a life. I cared for a woman I'll call Helen. I use a different name to protect her privacy. She was 79 when she moved into a nursing home after a minor fall. Before that, I'd been doing in-home care for her for about a year. Every morning when I arrived, she'd already be in her garden. Even in winter, she'd be out there checking on things, planning the spring beds. She'd come in with dirt under her nails and make us both breakfast. Scrambled eggs, toast, sometimes oatmeal. She decided her day, what time she'd eat, when she'd rest, whether she wanted company or quiet. 6 months after she moved into the facility, I went to visit her. She was sitting in a chair by the window, hands folded in her lap. clean hands, no dirt. The staff told me she'd adjusted well. But when I sat with her, I noticed something. She didn't make a single decision the entire time I was there. Breakfast came when they brought it. She ate what was on the tray. When an aide said it was time for her shower, she stood up without question. When they said activities were starting, she went. She stopped making decisions because there were no decisions left to make. When you eat, what you eat. When you sleep, when you shower, what you wear, whether you want to be social or have some quiet time alone. In a nursing home, these things run on a schedule, and I understand why. There are staff rotations, meal times, limited resources. I'm not criticizing the system. I'm telling you what happens to a person when every small choice is removed. You become passive, not because you're declining, but because there's nothing left to decide. Helen's family visited on Sundays. They saw her clean, fed, safe. They thought she'd adjusted. But I was there on a Tuesday afternoon, and I saw what they didn't. The light had gone out of her eyes. The woman who used to plan her garden months in advance, who used to decide what she wanted for breakfast, who controlled her own days. She was waiting to be told what to do next. If you're a senior watching this and you've noticed this happening to you, I want you to know, you're not imagining it. The loss of control is real, and it matters more than most people understand. The second truth is about isolation. And this one surprises families the most because their loved one is surrounded by people all day long. There are other residents, there's staff, there are activities. How could they possibly be lonely? But here's what I've learned. There's a difference between being around people and being in your community. I cared for a man I'll call Thomas. He was 82, moved into a nursing home after his wife passed. Before that, he'd lived in the same neighborhood for 40 years. He knew everyone. The woman at the corner store knew he liked his coffee black. The mailman knew he'd have a joke ready. His neighbors knew his stories from Korea, knew about his grandkids, knew he'd been a carpenter. In the nursing home, nobody knew any of that. They were kind people, good people, but they were strangers. And over the months I cared for him there, I watched him stop talking, not because he couldn't, but because what was the point of telling a story when nobody knew the context? When nobody remembered your life? His daughter visited every week. She told me she thought he was declining, getting quieter with age. But I knew what was really happening. He was lonely. Desperately lonely, surrounded by people all day and more alone than he'd been in his empty house after his wife died. Because in his house, he could call his neighbor, he could walk to the corner store, he could be part of something that knew him. In the facility, he was just another resident, a nice man in room 214, but not Thomas, who built that bookshelf in his grandson's room and who still remembered every word to songs from the 50s. This is what families miss when they visit. You see your loved one at the lunch table with other people. You see them in the activity room. It looks social, but you're not there during the long afternoons when they're sitting in a room full of strangers with no one who knows their story. Purpose and autonomy aren't luxuries. They're not extras. They're what keep us vital. They're what keep us engaged. And when they disappear, I've watched people decline in ways that have nothing to do with their physical health. I'm sharing this not to make you feel guilty if your loved one is already in a facility. And I'm not saying nursing homes are always the wrong choice, but I need you to understand what's being traded because these losses are real and they happen faster than anyone expects. And what I'm about to share next is even harder to see. The third truth is one that breaks my heart every time I see it. Cognitive decline can accelerate in institutional settings, and I need to be clear about what I mean by that. I cared for a man I'll call Arthur. I use a different name to protect his privacy. He was 76 when he moved into a nursing home. Before that, I'd been doing in-home care for him after his wife passed. This man managed his own finances. He cooked elaborate meals, the kind that took planning and technique. He did the Sunday crossword in pen. His mind was sharp. His daughter decided he needed more structured care after he had a small kitchen fire. Nothing serious, but it scared her. And I understand that fear. I really do. So Arthur moved into a facility with 24-hour supervision. 3 months later, I went to visit him. I brought the Sunday crossword, thinking we'd work on it together like we used to. But when I sat down with him, something was different. He stared at the puzzle for a long time. Then he looked at me and said he couldn't remember how to start. This was a man who used to finish these in under an hour. The research backs this up, but I've witnessed it myself too many times to count. When you're not challenged to remember your routine, when you're not managing your home, when you're not solving the daily problems that come with independent living, the mind loses its sharpness. The mind is a muscle. When you stop using it, it weakens. In Arthur's home, he had to remember to pay bills. He had to plan meals and shop for groceries. He had to manage his medications, keep track of appointments, decide how to spend his days. In the facility, all of that was done for him. They brought him his pills, they served him meals, they told him when activities were happening. He didn't have to remember anything. And within 3 months, I watched the fog set in. Not because he had dementia, not because of any disease, but because there was nothing left for his mind to hold on to. If you're watching this and you've noticed this happening to someone you love, or maybe even to yourself, I want you to understand what you're seeing. It's not always inevitable decline. Sometimes it's what happens when we remove all the challenges that keep our minds engaged. The fourth truth is about safety, and this is the one that's hardest for families to hear because safety is usually the main reason for making this decision in the first place. Yes, nursing homes have handrails. Yes, there's staff available 24 hours a day. Yes, there are safety protocols. But I've seen seniors fall in nursing homes too. I've responded to those calls. And what I've learned is that the emotional and cognitive cost of prioritizing safety above everything else doesn't always add up the way families think it will. I cared for a couple I'll call Eleanor and James. They were both in their early 80s. James had Parkinson's, and his care needs had gotten beyond what Eleanor could manage on her own. His balance was getting worse. He'd had a few falls. His doctor recommended memory care. But here's what happened. The facility wouldn't take them together unless Eleanor also became a resident. She didn't need institutional care. She was active, independent, healthy, but she couldn't bear the thought of James being alone in there. So she gave up her apartment, her independence, her community, and moved in with him. I watched Eleanor decline faster than James did. She went from walking 3 miles a day to sitting in a chair most of the time because there was nowhere to walk. She went from cooking her own meals and managing her life to waiting for everything to be brought to her. Within a year, her health had deteriorated in ways that had nothing to do with any medical condition. She sacrificed her well-being for his safety. And I'm not sure the math worked out in anyone's favor. What are you actually trading? That's the question I need you to sit with. Yes, there's more supervision in a nursing home, but there's also the loss of autonomy that affects physical health. There's the cognitive decline that comes from having nothing to manage. There's the emotional cost of losing purpose and independence. I've also seen seniors who needed this level of care. I want to be very clear about that. I've worked with people whose medical needs were so complex, whose safety risks were so severe, that institutional care was absolutely the right answer. Robert, the man I mentioned earlier with memory care needs, he stabilized in that environment. His wandering had put him in real danger, and the structure helped him. But that's exactly why these decisions must be made with full awareness. You need to understand both what you're gaining and what you're losing, because the trade-off isn't always as simple as safety versus risk. Sometimes you're trading one kind of decline for another, and families deserve to know that before they make a choice that's incredibly difficult to undo. The fifth truth is one that families often don't talk about openly until they're already deep into it: the financial reality of nursing home care. I've sat with families who thought they understood the cost. They'd done the research, looked at the numbers, but then the reality set in. $5,000, $7,000, sometimes $10,000 a month. And it doesn't stop. Month after month, watching the savings they'd built over a lifetime disappear faster than they ever imagined. I'm not sharing this to shame anyone. Money is a deeply personal thing, and every family situation is different. But I've watched the guilt layer on top of guilt. The adult children feeling terrible that their parents' life savings is being depleted. The seniors feeling like a burden, watching everything they worked for disappear to pay for care they're not even sure they want. And here's what makes it even harder. Once those costs are adding up month after month, families start to feel trapped. They think, we've already spent so much, we can't turn back now, even when everyone involved is unhappy with the situation. The sixth truth connects directly to this. It's incredibly difficult to leave once you're there. I cared for a woman I'll call Dorothy. I use a different name to protect her privacy. She was 81 when she moved into a nursing home after a hospital stay. 6 months later, she told me she wanted to go home. She missed her apartment, her neighbors, her life, but she'd gotten weaker, not from any disease, but from 6 months of having everything done for her. The thought of managing on her own again felt impossible. The transition itself felt insurmountable. I've watched this pattern over and over. People move into nursing homes thinking it's temporary, or at least reversible. But the longer you're there, the harder it becomes to imagine leaving. You've lost muscle strength from inactivity. You've lost confidence from having every decision made for you. You've lost the systems and routines that helped you manage at home. And so you stay, even when you don't want to. But here's what I want you to know before you make this choice. There are alternatives that most families don't fully explore. In-home care is one option. Yes, it costs money, but sometimes when you actually compare the numbers, bringing care into the home costs less than a nursing home. And the person gets to stay in their own environment, maintain their autonomy, keep their community. Adult day programs can provide socialization and supervision during the day while allowing someone to sleep in their own bed at night. Assisted living offers more support than home, but more independence than a nursing home. Some families create rotation systems where different family members help on different days. Community support programs, meal delivery services, transportation help. There are more resources available than most people realize. I've seen 80-year-olds thrive at home with the right support in place, not because they didn't need help, but because the help came to them instead of requiring them to give up everything familiar. I also want to tell you about Robert. I mentioned him earlier. He was 79, had advancing dementia, and his wandering was putting him in real danger. His wife couldn't manage it alone anymore, even with in-home care. Memory care was the right choice for him. He needed that level of structure and supervision, and in that environment, he actually stabilized. He was safer, and his wife could visit knowing he was protected. So I'm not saying nursing homes are never the right answer. Sometimes they absolutely are. When medical needs are complex, when safety risks are severe, when family truly cannot provide adequate care, even with support. I've seen institutional care save lives. But that decision should come after you've explored everything else, after you've asked the hard questions. What level of care is actually needed? Not what might be needed someday, but what's needed right now. What would it cost to bring that care into the home? Have you actually looked into in-home caregivers, adult day programs, or assisted living? And most importantly, what does your loved one want? Have you had that conversation? Have you really listened to their answer? If you're watching this about a parent or loved one, these are questions worth asking together. If you're watching this as a senior yourself, your voice matters in this decision. You get to have preferences about your own life. Every situation is different. I know that. What worked for Robert might not work for Dorothy. What works for one family might not work for another. But awareness gives you power. The power to make a choice you can live with, understanding both what you're gaining and what you're losing. Because the regret I see most often isn't about making the wrong choice. It's about not understanding what was being chosen until it was too late to do anything about it. After 15 years in this field and hundreds of families I've walked alongside, I've learned something important. The regret I see isn't about the choice itself. It's about not understanding what was being chosen. I've sat with families who made the decision to move their loved one into a nursing home thoughtfully. They explored alternatives. They asked hard questions. They understood both what they were gaining and what they were losing. Those families grieve. Yes, this is never an easy path, but they don't carry the same regret because they made the choice with their eyes fully open. I've also sat with families who didn't know, who thought they were just doing what was responsible, what was safe, what everyone said was best. And then they watched their loved one decline in ways they never expected. They saw the light go out, they heard, "I want to go home." And they didn't understand why, because on paper, everything seemed fine. That's the regret that haunts people. The feeling that if someone had just told them, they might have made a different choice. That's why I make these videos, not to scare you, not to tell you what to do, but to give you the awareness I wish I could give every family I work with. If you're a senior watching this, I want you to hear me. Your voice matters in this decision. Your preferences, your fears, your hopes about how you want to live the rest of your life, they deserve to be heard, not dismissed, not overruled because your children are worried, heard and taken seriously. You get to have preferences about your own life. You get to say, "I understand the risks, and I'd rather stay in my home." You get to say, "I'm lonely here, and I want to try something different." You get to advocate for yourself, even when the people who love you are scared. And if you're watching this about a parent or loved one, I see you too. This is one of the hardest decisions you'll ever make. There is no perfect answer. There's no choice that won't involve some grief, some worry, some trade-offs. But you can make this choice with awareness. You can ask the questions before you're in too deep. What level of care does my loved one actually need right now? What would it cost to bring support into their home? What do they want? Have I really listened to their answer, or have I been so focused on what I think is safe that I haven't heard what they're saying? There's no shame in not knowing these things before now. Most people don't. That's exactly why I'm here. If you do choose a nursing home, there are ways to protect what matters most. Visit often, not just on special occasions, but regularly, so you see the full picture. Stay involved in their care. Ask questions. Advocate when something doesn't feel right. Help them maintain their identity. Bring photos, familiar objects, reminders of who they are beyond just another resident. Encourage them to speak up about their preferences. The seniors who do best in institutional settings are the ones who maintain connection to the outside world and to who they were before. And if you're exploring alternatives, know this: you have more options than you think. In-home care, adult day programs, assisted living, community support. These aren't just for other people. They're available to you, and sometimes, with the right support in place, staying home is not only possible, but better for everyone involved. Every situation is different. What I've shared today might not all apply to you, but I hope it's given you things to think about, questions to ask, conversations to have. I've spent 15 years in this field because I believe the later years of life can be some of the most meaningful if we approach them with awareness and intention. I've seen too many families lose time they could have had together. I've heard too many regrets. That's why I keep doing this work. That's why I made this video. You're not alone in navigating this. The love that brought you here, the care you're showing by trying to learn, by trying to do right by the people you love, that matters. That counts for so much. Take care of yourself. Take care of each other. And remember, awareness gives you the power to make choices you can live with, choices that honor both safety and dignity, both protection and autonomy. I'll see you in the next one.